I found out on a Tuesday. The bank account was empty. 30 years of marriage. And I was left with less than the price of a meal. I stared at the screen, willing it to be a glitch. But it wasn't. My husband, my partner, my so-called protector, had drained every cent. Worse, he hadn't done it for us, or even for himself. He did it to fund his mistress's lifestyle. Her name appeared on transfers, credit card statements, even the deed to a condo. The man I built my life with had stolen it all, and he hadn't blinked. We were high school sweethearts, married young, built a business together. He said he admired my brains. I thought we were a team. I handled operations while he networked. He called me the backbone. I thought it was love. I thought we were growing old together. I didn't know he was rotting from the inside out while smiling in my face. The red flags weren't red at first. Just small things. He changed passwords. He said it was for security. I believed him. Then he forgot anniversaries, blamed stress. I believed that too, until a friend saw him at a hotel lobby with a woman half my age. He brushed it off, said she was a client. I looked in her eyes once, and my stomach twisted. Clients don't hold hands. They don't wear $20,000 necklaces. I never got. I checked our accounts, or tried to. The logins didn't work. He claimed we switched banks. I asked for details. He got angry, defensive, said I didn't trust him. And I felt quiet, ashamed. I'd been trained to believe silence meant loyalty. I didn't realize it only made me easier to control. By the time I demanded transparency, he was already 10 steps ahead. The documents I thought we shared were long forged in his favor. My name was removed from everything. The business, the house, even the insurance policies. He said it was to protect our assets. He lied. It was to erase me. And he did it with such ease, it made me question my sanity. I started wondering if I was the problem. Maybe I was forgetful. Maybe I was overreacting. I clung to denial because truth felt unbearable. The truth meant I'd wasted 3 decades on a man who saw me as disposable. Then came the phone call from the bank. A flagged transaction. A wire transfer to a woman named Stephanie. Not a relative. Not a vendor. When I asked him, he said she was a family friend going through a hard time. But I knew, the way he avoided eye contact, the way his hands trembled, he wasn't helping someone. He was supporting someone. With my money. With our future. He used my loyalty to bankroll his double life. I started digging. I stayed up at night, going through statements, receipts, legal documents. I called old contacts in finance. Everything pointed to the same nightmare. He had embezzled funds from our shared business, laundered money through fake companies, and poured it all into a lifestyle I never saw. Private jets, designer clothes, weekend trips with her while I stayed home budgeting groceries. I wasn't his wife. I was his cover story. When I confronted him, he didn't even deny it. He laughed, said I should have known, called me naive, accused me of being too boring, too focused on work, said she made him feel alive. I stood there, mouth dry, hearing him confess without remorse, as if I'd forced him into betrayal by being a loyal, hard-working wife. That night, I didn't cry. I sat in the guest room and stared at the wall until morning. My soul was numb. He told our children I was going through a breakdown, that I'd imagined the whole thing. He twisted facts so well that for a moment, they believed him. My daughter called, confused and hurt. My son went silent. That shattered me more than the theft. He not only robbed me of money, he was stealing my identity, my credibility. I was the villain in his story, and he was winning. I tried to leave. I packed a bag and went to a hotel. But the next day, my card was declined. He'd frozen all accounts, even the joint ones. He left me with nothing. No money, no home, no voice. I had to borrow cash from an old friend just to buy toiletries. That Humiliation, I'll never forget it. Me, the woman who once balanced books for a seven-figure company, couldn't afford toothpaste. I had one thing left, my name, so I used it. I contacted a lawyer, a sharp woman named Eva, who specialized in high-net-worth divorce and fraud. At first, she hesitated. The documents I had were shaky, scattered, but then I showed her an email. Just one, from him to his mistress, bragging about cleaning me out. Her eyes narrowed. "We're going to bury him," she said. It was the first time in weeks I felt something close to hope. The court battles began. He tried to delay, to lie, to cry in front of judges. He said I was unstable, emotionally abusive, controlling. He hired character witnesses. I countered with receipts, emails, audio recordings. My hands shook every time I stepped into that courtroom. But I showed up, every day, because now it wasn't just about money. It was about my dignity. He'd taken everything. I wasn't letting him keep the truth. He brought Stephanie to the hearing once, sat her beside him like a prize. She wore a white dress, like she'd won some twisted pageant. I didn't look at her. I looked at the judge, at the documents, at my lawyer. I reminded myself, I was here for war, not show, but inside, I bled, watching him smile at her the way he used to smile at me, watching him pretend we never mattered. My daughter testified. At first, she was hesitant, but then she saw the bank statements. She heard the recordings. The lies fell apart. She broke down on the stand, sobbing, said she didn't know who he was anymore. My son came next. He was quiet, but when asked, he said, "My father stole from my mother. That's all I need to know." I nearly collapsed from the weight of it. Finally, they saw me again. Every delay tactic failed. Every attempt he made to dismiss the case only made him look worse. He tried to settle, offer me pennies. I refused. This wasn't about dollars anymore. It was about the years, the blood and sweat I poured into that business, into that marriage, the nights I stayed up fixing his messes, the way he stood behind me in wedding photos while plotting my erasure. I wanted justice, not hush money. The court finally ruled in my favor. He was ordered to pay restitution, plus damages. The mistress's condo? Seized. His personal accounts? Frozen. I watched the verdict come down like a guillotine, clean and final. For the first time in years, I breathed. Not fully, but deeply enough to remember who I used to be. He looked at me as they read the judgment. His eyes pleaded. I looked away. He didn't exist anymore. Even after the ruling, the emotional cleanup was harder. Every corner of my home reminded me of him. Every item had a memory attached. The couch we picked out, the clock we hung together. I started donating things, stripping the house of every ghost. It hurt, but it was necessary. I needed space to rebuild. Not just the house, but myself. And every item gone felt like a layer of poison scraped off my skin. People started coming forward. Old employees, ex-friends. Turns out, I wasn't the only one he'd betrayed. He owed money, had forged signatures, promised investments that never existed. I wasn't just reclaiming my life. I was exposing a fraud. My case triggered investigations. He thought he was untouchable, but his empire was built on lies. And now the foundation had crumbled. Every person he wronged added a crack. He never thought I'd speak. I started working again. Small consulting projects. At first, it was terrifying. Would people take me seriously? Would I fall apart mid-meeting? But I didn't. In fact, I flourished. People trusted me more. They admired the way I rose. Some even said I inspired them. That word, inspire, felt foreign at first. I was just trying to survive. But slowly, I began to believe them. Maybe my story wasn't just tragic. Maybe it was powerful. One night, I sat alone with a glass of wine. No noise. No anger. Just quiet. I thought of the girl I used to be, the woman who trusted too easily, who thought love meant sacrifice. I raised my glass to her, not with pity, but with pride. She didn't die. She evolved. She took the knife from her back and carved a new path. And now, she's not afraid to walk it alone. I saw him once at the grocery store. Alone, thinner, aged by stress. He looked like a man trying to remember who he used to be. When our eyes met, he flinched. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. My silence said everything. How I'd outgrown him. How I no longer feared him. He stood there waiting for a reaction, maybe even a crumb of forgiveness. I picked up my basket and walked away, free. Later that month, I found an envelope on my porch. No name, but I recognized his handwriting. Inside was a letter, begging for understanding. He claimed he was lost, that Stephanie had left him too, that he missed us. He said he still loved me. He asked for a chance to make things right. I burned the letter, not out of rage, but clarity. You don't rebuild with the man who tore down the house while you slept. Healing wasn't linear. Some days I woke up strong. Other days, I cried brushing my teeth. Grief doesn't announce itself. It creeps in during grocery runs or while folding laundry. But I kept going. Therapy helped. Journaling helped more. I started writing letters I'd never send to the version of me who stayed too long, to the version who believed love should hurt. I told her she was enough, that she always was. I started mentoring women going through divorces. Women like me, smart, capable, and blindsided. I shared my story in bits, careful not to reopen wounds too wide. But each time, I saw a spark in their eyes. Like maybe they weren't alone. Like maybe if I could rise, they could too. And I realized something. Survival is quiet, but healing echoes. My pain wasn't just mine anymore. It was a bridge for others. He tried to delay restitution payments, claimed bankruptcy, tried hiding assets under a cousin's name. My lawyer stayed on it. So did I. Every time he tried to dodge responsibility, I was there, calm, precise, unyielding. I didn't raise my voice. I raised my standards. He once told me I was too soft. But softness is not weakness. My strength was in the way I didn't let bitterness poison me. I chose power over revenge. Stephanie messaged me. A long paragraph, dripping with faux remorse. She said she didn't know he was married. Another lie. She said she was young and foolish. She asked if we could meet. I declined. I didn't need her tears, her guilt, or her story. I didn't hate her, but I owed her nothing. Forgiveness doesn't always mean access. I'd already made peace. Reopening the wound wouldn't serve me. Closure came when I stopped seeking it. I moved out of the old house, sold it to a lovely retired couple. They thanked me, said it had good bones. I smiled. They didn't know what those walls had seen. I didn't need them to. I bought a smaller place near the coast. Big windows, open sky. My bedroom faces the sunrise. Every morning, light pours in like a blessing. I make coffee. I sit by the window, and I remind myself I survived. My children come around more now. At first, it was awkward. They carried guilt like it was theirs to bear. But I never blamed them. They were manipulated too. Slowly we rebuilt. We cook together. We laugh. Sometimes we cry. But there's love again. Real, untangled love. And when my daughter says, "Mom, you're the strongest woman I know," I believe her. Because strength isn't what got me through. Faith in myself did. People often ask if I regret marrying him. I don't. That version of me needed to learn. She needed to love deeply, even the wrong person, so she could one day love herself with the same intensity. Pain teaches, betrayal burns, but it clears the path. I'm not who I was before. I'm not even who I was during. I am the aftermath. And I like her. She walks taller. She walks alone. And that's enough. One night, I found an old photo of us, smiling on our 10th anniversary. I stared at it for a while, searching for signs. There were none. Just two people, and 1,000 lies hidden between them. I put it in a box labeled past. Then I closed it and placed it on a shelf, not to revisit, but to remind myself, even the darkest stories can birth light. And mine is just beginning. One afternoon, I was invited to speak at a women's financial empowerment seminar. I hesitated. Sharing my story so publicly felt like tearing open old stitches. But something inside me said, "Do it." I stood before a room of strangers, my hands trembling, heart pounding. And then I began. I spoke of trust misplaced, of a 30-year lie, of betrayal and rebirth. As I spoke, heads nodded, tears welled. By the end, they stood and clapped. Not because I was perfect, but because I was proof. Proof that survival doesn't have to be silent. Afterward, a woman hugged me so tightly, I nearly cried. "You saved me?" she whispered. I didn't know her name, but I knew her pain. And for the first time, I understood this wasn't just my story. It was a mirror for anyone who's ever given too much and gotten too little in return. I started consulting full-time, rebuilding my career brick by brick. The woman people saw now was different, firmer, more grounded, no longer apologizing for taking up space. Clients trusted me quickly. Some said I had a presence that made them feel safe. I think it was the pain, honestly, the way I carried it openly without shame. There's something about surviving betrayal that sharpens your instincts. You stop second-guessing your gut. You learn that sometimes the softest voice in your head is the wisest one. I stopped needing to prove anything to anyone. My value was no longer tethered to being someone's wife, someone's backup, someone's fool. It was mine, hard-earned, non-negotiable. And as business grew, so did I, not into someone new, but into the version of myself I'd buried beneath all the compromise. She'd waited patiently, and now she had my full attention. One morning, he called. After 2 years of silence, I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened, out of curiosity, not weakness. His voice was tired, slurred almost. He said he missed my steadiness, that nothing felt right without me, that Stephanie had left him for someone richer. "Karma," he mumbled. He said he was sorry, that he wished he could undo the past. I didn't respond, not because I hated him, but because I no longer needed anything from him. Not his apology, not his remorse. The closure I once begged for had already bloomed inside me. His regret wasn't my responsibility. His pain wasn't my concern. That voicemail, though brief, said everything I needed to hear. He was broken by the very tools he used to break me. And I was still standing, still rising, still alive. That, to me, was enough. I joined a hiking group. Nothing fancy, just local trails, weekend mornings. I needed something for my body, something that wasn't about work or survival. The first few hikes were brutal. My legs ached, my lungs screamed, but I kept going. There was something healing about nature, its quiet honesty, its refusal to hurry. I met people who knew nothing about my past, who didn't see me as the woman who was betrayed, but simply as someone who liked sunrises and steep climbs. There was freedom in that. One morning, I reached the top of a small ridge just as the sun broke over the trees. I stood there, wind on my face, breath steady, heart full. No courtroom, no lies, just me. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't climbing away from my past. I was climbing into my future, one step at a time, on my own terms. I visited my childhood home, now empty and weathered, peeling paint, rusted gate, a porch that creaked with memories. I walked room to room, letting the silence speak. This was where I learned to be small, to stay quiet, to seek approval, at any cost. No wonder I clung so long to a man who mirrored that silence back at me. Standing there, I whispered aloud, "I see you now. I won't forget you again." That little girl deserved more than survival. She deserved joy, laughter, and light. I couldn't give her back what was lost, but I could honor her in every choice I made going forward. I left a small note in the corner of the attic. "You made it. You're safe now." Then I locked the door and walked away, not from the past, but from the shame tied to it. And with each step, I felt lighter. He reached out again, this time through mutual friends. Said he wanted to return some belongings. Said he had things of sentimental value he thought I might want back. I declined. I'd already grieved the loss of every necklace, every framed photo, every fake anniversary gift he once gave. Objects carry energy, and his was the kind that clung like mildew. I didn't want reminders. I wanted rebirth. So I let him keep them, if they meant so much. Let him live with the relics of a life he ruined. Let him dust those picture frames alone, wondering why the woman in them no longer exists. I don't need things to remember who I was. The real treasure wasn't in what I lost. It was in what I built afterward. Peace, independence, self-respect. And those don't fit in boxes or drawers. They live in how I wake up now, unafraid. A friend once asked if I'd ever love again. I laughed at first. Love? After all that? But then I paused. Because the answer wasn't no, it was maybe. Maybe love isn't about blind trust. Maybe it's about partnership, not sacrifice. Maybe next time, I won't shrink to fit someone else's story. I'll write my own. And if someone's worthy, they'll walk beside me, not ahead, not behind. For now, though, I love my solitude. I love my books, my walks, my quiet mornings. I don't need fireworks. I need peace. And when I do open my heart again, it won't be out of loneliness. It'll be out of fullness. That's the difference. I no longer chase completion. I already am whole. Whoever comes next will have to meet me at that level, or not at all. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. At first, it was rough. My hands didn't remember the strokes. But with each canvas, something loosened inside me. I painted women walking through storms, women with fire in their eyes, women sitting calmly amidst chaos. I wasn't painting for anyone else, just for me. It felt like reclaiming a part of myself he'd stolen, without even noticing. My first finished piece, I hung above the fireplace. A woman, spine straight, arms open to the rain. I called it Becoming. Every time I pass it, I smile, not because it's perfect. It isn't, but because it's honest. And maybe that's what I was always craving. Not the illusion of love, not the performance of loyalty, but raw, flawed, breathtaking honesty. In color, in life, in me. One night, I had a dream. I was back in court. Except this time, I was the judge. He stood before me, small and trembling. I looked at him and simply said, "I forgive you." Then I turned to leave. I woke up crying, not from sadness, but from release. My soul was done carrying his weight. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about freeing yourself from someone else's grip. I owed myself that. And that dream, it was my soul's way of handing me the key. The door had always been open. I just hadn't walked through. Now I have. And I'll never go back. I'll never forget what he did. I'll never pretend the wounds didn't bleed. But I no longer live in that place. My story isn't about the man who lied, stole, and betrayed. It's about the woman who rose anyway, who stood up when no one clapped, who chose healing even when vengeance beckoned. I look at my reflection now and see every scar, every wrinkle, every lesson, and I'm proud, not because it was easy, but because I didn't let it end me. This isn't the happy ending people expect. It's better. It's real. It's mine. A few months later, I was approached by a journalist. She'd heard about my case, how I sued the man who betrayed me, how I rebuilt everything from nothing. At first, I hesitated. I didn't want to be reduced to a headline or a sob story, but then I saw the look in her eyes, like maybe my words could help someone else. So I said yes. The article went viral within days. Women from all over the world reached out. Some were lawyers. Some were housewives. Some were just girls afraid to speak up. "You gave me courage," one message read. I cried reading that. Not because I needed validation, but because I'd once needed someone to say it was okay to leave, to fight, to live. And now I was that someone. I had become the voice I once prayed for. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was seen. A package arrived on my doorstep not long after. No return address. Inside was a thick envelope and a velvet box. I opened it slowly, cautious. The envelope held a handwritten letter from Stephanie. I froze. Her words spilled across the page, like regret had spilled across her life. She apologized, not just for her part in the affair, but for helping him drain me. She said he used her too. In the end, that he'd manipulated them both. The velvet box held the necklace, my grandmother's. One of the pieces he claimed was lost. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I simply placed it in my palm, heavy with memory, and whispered a quiet thank you, not for her, but for the closure. Sometimes healing doesn't arrive the way we expect. It creeps in through cracks we never thought would open again. He tried one last time, showed up at my book signing unannounced. His face was older, sadder, but the arrogance remained. He hovered in the back, watching me autograph pages that told the story he once tried to bury. When our eyes met, I didn't flinch. I nodded politely. That was all. Afterward, he approached with a hesitant smile. "You look different," he said. "You don't." I answered. He tried to make conversation, tried to say he'd changed, that he missed having someone who believed in him. I let him speak. Then I thanked him for showing me exactly who he was. Without his betrayal, I never would have found myself. That stunned him. He thought I'd still be angry. But anger was a weight I'd long since dropped. All I carried now was clarity. He left quietly that day, swallowed by the crowd. I watched him go, untouched and unshaken. I started a scholarship in my mother's name. She never had the chance to become who she wanted. Life boxed her in, and then he finished the job. But I wouldn't let her story be forgotten. The scholarship would go to women reclaiming their lives after domestic financial abuse, survivors of control masked as love. I met the first recipient that spring. Her name was Alana. She hugged me with a fierceness I didn't expect. "You made me believe I could begin again," she said, and I knew then this was the real legacy. Not the lawsuit, not the book, but the ripple effect of healing. What I had endured became the map others could follow. What once nearly destroyed me was now rebuilding lives. I'd always thought revenge would taste sweet, but this impact, it was richer, deeper. I was no longer fighting for survival. I was planting futures. I bought a little cabin in the mountains. Nothing extravagant, just peace. A porch where I could drink tea at sunrise. A fireplace for quiet evenings with books and paint. I spent weekends there alone, watching the wind play with the trees. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was sacred. On one visit, I found a family of deer grazing near the back fence. They looked up, unafraid, and I felt something loosen in my chest. I wasn't waiting for the next heartbreak. I wasn't bracing for betrayal. I was simply here, present, alive. My phone rang less. The noise of the world dulled. And in that stillness, I met myself again, this time without apology. There's something powerful about knowing you need nothing to feel complete. No partner, no audience, just your own breath. I sat on that porch and whispered, "You made it." The trees didn't answer, but I heard it anyway. Then came the day I stood in court again, not as a plaintiff, but as an advocate. I'd been asked to testify in a new case, similar to mine. A woman whose husband had funneled her inheritance into his own shady ventures. Her voice trembled, her hands fidgeted. But when I took the stand, I looked her in the eye and spoke truth. I told the court how financial betrayal feels like slow drowning, how people assume money isn't personal, when in fact, it's as intimate as it gets. I spoke for her, and for the woman I once was. When the verdict came down in her favor, she collapsed into tears. I held her, steady as stone. I didn't need recognition, just justice. And when she whispered, "You saved me," I realized justice wasn't just for me anymore. It was a chain reaction, a rising tide, and I was proud to be part of it. Standing there in court, watching justice finally tip in my favor, I felt something shift deep inside. This wasn't just about money reclaimed or titles restored. It was about reclaiming my life from years of lies. Every lawyer's nod, every judge's gavel, echoed like a drumbeat of freedom. I remembered the nights I cried alone, the days I felt invisible, the moments I doubted my worth. And now, here I was standing tall, no longer the victim, but the victor. This victory wasn't just mine. It belonged to every woman silenced by betrayal, every soul crushed under the weight of deception. I thought about how far I'd come, how the pain once threatened to consume me, but instead became the fuel for my rise. In that courtroom, surrounded by strangers, I finally felt at home, in control, whole, unstoppable. After the trial, I walked out of the courthouse with my head held high. The media swarmed, eager for a soundbite, a headline. I gave them my truth, raw and unfiltered. I spoke about the years stolen, the love faked, and the strength found. I told them my story wasn't unique. It was the story of so many women trapped behind closed doors and silent hearts. And that was the message I wanted to send. You are not alone. You are stronger than the lies that try to define you. As cameras flashed, I felt a fierce calm settle over me. This was my new life, one where I didn't hide, didn't shrink, and didn't settle. I was reborn from ashes, forged by fire, and ready to light the way for others. Now, years later, I look back not with bitterness, but with gratitude, grateful for the pain that woke me up, grateful for the betrayal that forced my hands to fight, grateful for the quiet moments of rebuilding, the people who lifted me, and the strength I found in solitude. I've learned that rebirth isn't a single moment. It's a series of choices, small and fierce, made every day. I am no longer defined by his lies or the fortune he stole. I am defined by my courage, my voice, and my refusal to be silent. I am whole, not because of what I gained, but because of what I refused to lose. My self-respect, my dignity, my truth. And that is a victory worth more than any fortune could buy. I still carry scars, some visible, some buried deep. But scars are reminders of survival, not weakness. They tell a story of pain endured and strength reclaimed. And whenever doubt creeps in, I look at those scars and remember, I am here, I am alive, I am free. My husband's lies no longer have the power to chain me. The fortune he stole can never steal my worth. I have rewritten my story, painted it in bold strokes of justice and healing. And though the past will always be part of me, it no longer controls me. I am the author now, the heroine, the reborn woman who refused to be broken. And that is a truth I will carry with me forever. If you're watching this and feel trapped by someone else's lies, know this. Your story isn't over. There is pain. Yes. Betrayal. Yes. But there is also hope. There is strength you haven't met yet. And there is a life waiting on the other side of the storm. A life where you reclaim your power, your peace, your joy. It won't be easy. It might take years, but it is possible. You deserve to be whole. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to be reborn. So hold on. Fight. And when you're ready, rise. Because your victory is waiting. And I believe in you.